in an absolute quality. And this is why we find in light the four primary attributes of God. But when Allah breathes His Spirit into a lesser form of existence than light, that exists in a relative form, like matter and human beings, He can only breathe a tiny portion in, because you cannot put absolute in something that is relative, but you can put absolute in something that is absolute. And I make the assumption, the logical assumption from various places, but part of what I'm telling you today is the way I come to know knowledge. I look at the Quran and see where Allah says to the angels, I am creating a Khalifa on earth. And the angels say right away, why create as your Khalifa a being who will cause mischief and shed blood? Now, how do the angels know the future? So I assume that the angels know the future because Allah has breathed an absolute quality into them. And that absolute quality is to be eternal. And so in the same way that Allah is eternal, but lesser, I don't know exactly what it means to have a lesser quality of absolute, but by being eternal, it is possible to know past, present, and future simultaneously because you are outside of time. So in essence, in a misuse of the word, for a being that is eternal, all time is now. Our past, our present, and our future is to an eternal being a now. So the angels knew what the future would be, and this is why they asked that question. So I go from the fact that they asked that question to say that they must have had breathed into them at least one absolute attribute of Allah. Then I would say logically, if Allah breathed in one absolute attribute, maybe He will breathe in other absolute attributes. So we don't know how close this created light is to the actual nature of Allah. And I've looked all over to find out why it is that many scholars, many Islamic scholars say Allah is created light. I have not been able to find why they say Allah is created light. But I do know that many scholars refer to Allah, as uncreated light. Many scholars refer to Allah as uncreated light. So, we have Allah here, who then, with His creative attribute, creates light, and breathes into that light absolute characteristics. And these that the absolute characteristics are in there logically by surah in the Quran, as I pointed out, and they are in there by Einstein's special theory of relativity that shows light has absolute qualities. And the four absolute qualities being the same ones that theologians say are the primary attributes of God. But then Allah separates this spiritual world into two. And now from created, we have Allah, then we have created light, and then from created light we have material existence. And as I pointed out in previous weeks, just to briefly show again, right, we have light and light. So Allah directs this created light to, at a singularity, which is a point with no dimension, to become subatomic particles, which are now material existence. And because Allah has imbued into His created light absolute characteristics that, and we don't know what number of attributes. The scholars say, we say that Allah has 99 attributes, but scholars say that the number of attributes of Allah are infinite. We just don't know the rest of them. They're outside our range of knowledge. But when Allah directs light to become subatomic particles or to create the material world, this light does not quit being light. These subatomic particles equal slow light. This is light in its absolute sense, which from our point of view, our relative perception, is traveling around 300,000 kilometers per second. These particles all travel less than that, but they are still light. They are light in an altered form. So when Allah directs light, or photons, electromagnetic energy, to become subatomic particles, that some number of his attributes in some portion get put into, as potential, these subatomic particles. And now we are starting to get to what the real nature of existence is about. That Allah creates a material existence of what appears to us to be little tiny bits of stuff. And those little tiny bits of stuff has put into it, by light, some of the potential that Allah breathed into the created light. But subatomic particles such as an electron does not have the opportunity to express very fully whatever potential Allah has placed into matter through light. Basically, an electron doesn't do very many things. And so what we see Allah doing then, and the whole universe, and this is like Allah's grand cosmic plan, that there is a I was actually just reading today a scholar who took the position that Allah did not actually create the universe with a purpose. That Allah created the universe only because He has a creative attribute. And because Allah has a creative attribute, He of course creates. So he wanted to say that there is no purpose behind the creation other than Allah manifesting His creative attribute. Personally, I believe that Allah has a very distinct purpose, which I will try and give some hints about today. I don't want to say I know exactly what that purpose is by any means, but I think we have some pretty good hints as to what it is. And one of the fairly direct places is in that same ayat that I was referring to before, where Allah tells the angels that He is creating human beings to be His Khalifa on earth. And then being asked, well, why these creatures who are going to cause all this trouble? And Allah says, because I know what you do not know. And I take that as an interpretation that Allah has a plan. I think that Allah would not say to the angels, because I know what you do not know, if He did not have a plan. If He was merely creating because one of His attributes was the ability to create, I don't think it would necessitate saying to the angels, because I know what you do not know. And it does seem rather unreasonable from the point of view of a being that is created to perfectly obey the will of Allah, like an angel, if they don't know what Allah's plan is. While they may know our past and our future, this does not mean they know everything that